Chapter 5, Day 5. When Glendorian finally returned home, he found his realm blasted with snow. Everywhere an unnatural storm, his kings and queens scattered. He sent fast riders to the four corners of the realm. They must come quickly, for we are all in danger. He went to Nyan, to the great city and to its pavilion, and sat there beneath the great wooden spires and refused to leave. Once the pavilion was full, Glendorian began to tell his story, and they listened to this great story of his, of how Thrindorian and him had found the daughters of heaven, how they had climbed up into the last cup, the 13th cup, how they had reached out their hands and touched the shattered stones of destiny, and most importantly, they had been given the gift. And with that, Glendorian looked around at the people and saw his soldiers. "Bring it forward," he said. And when they got to Glendorian, they turned around and held it high. "You see this," he said. "This was found with the stones. Inside of this gimblin, there is an old scroll, ancient it is, written, my friends, by our ancestors. It was written for us, for today. For on that scroll, it speaks of what we suffer now. It speaks of unnatural storms. It speaks of a great shadow lord. And it tells us, your forest that will not thrive, take it elsewhere. Your king saved my life and gave his own. And when he lay in my arms, and your king, my brother, he and I were set upon by wolves one night. He gave a great prophecy to give to you. He looked up at me and he said, I see the bright lands. I see such wonders. And I see that one day the forest that we have must be brought here. Glendorian said all of this and more, and the elvish people listened in silence. That we must dig up our sacred forest, the forest of 900 trees, and we must take it with us and travel south to where he is waiting. And these people, these elves, they looked at one another and there was a light in their eyes. They saw that this was a sacred thing to do. Each family, the next day, they took it upon themselves to choose one of the 900 trees. They soaked the roots, they wrapped the roots in sacking, and then they began their journey together, leaving their homeland, using Galamar's map as best they could. They travelled through the land of the dwarfs, a place of wonders. They saw the great fires that they have made for hundreds of years. Then they crossed the frozen seas in huge skating ships and saw before them the rising towers of Holothron, the land of the dead. They went on and on, ever south, and the further they travelled, greater were the storms that confronted them, that tried to stop them. It was a long and arduous journey. Some did not survive. They buried their dead as they went, and young and old alike helped one another on that great journey. They travelled many rough terrains, made all the worse by those unnatural storms that seemed to follow them wherever they went. They lost count of how many were thrown from the mountains by the violent storms. Some became sick, others dangerously slow, but still they went on. Mountain and moorland blizzards tore at them, but this great horde of white elves, they stayed together. These were the last of the north. They carried the great forest and would not be broken. Days and nights went on they went, cold with rain, until they entered a place that would become known one day as the Great North Gate. Upon a rise, those elvish folk stood and surveyed a spread of steep, green, undulating hills, leading to greener valleys, with moors behind them. It was such a sight. "Are we not in Aldemar?" more than one elder was heard to say. "Is this not heaven? Then what is it?" "It's our new home," Glendorian reassured them, as he cupped his hands in the river and revived himself with the sweet waters. Come, come, let me show you where the rivers rise. You have not seen the best of it yet." And they followed him along the river's edge, the scent of summer everywhere, until they saw a lake in the distance and a waterfall beyond. And when they were all close enough to feel the spray of the water, and they climbed up a path beside that waterfall, all of them soaking now. And when they got to the top, there was a small pool. Beside the pool was the shape of Thrindorian, their king, now turned to stone, his mouth open, water gushing. And in the pool, beautiful white star-shaped flowers. In all the years to come they would find those flowers nowhere else. And so they called these flowers dreaming flowers. For they believed that Thrindorian was dreaming, and his dreams were the flowers. So sometimes children, young children, would come down to the pool and they would gently take out one of the flowers and they would press it against their cheek or their ear, and they would listen. Now as they stood and looked at their king, now turned to stone, Glendorian said, "So, here he lies, and the water that he gives us comes from the bright lands, as was the prophecy, and the water that falls down to the pool below will feed the roots of our trees and feed all of you and your families for 3,000 years. For that is the prophecy."